Hello and welcome to my presentation, Thonis-Heracleion and East Canopus, Does the Archaeology Support the Theories? This presentation will briefly cover what the research is about, the discovery of the sites, how the data was sourced, the results, and the theories explored. The whole aim of this research was a response to Frank Goddeau's statement. Whether both cities were lost at the same time or during different episodes of sedimentary collapse is a question for future research. It is about whether the archaeological record can tell us when these cities sank, if they sank together, and if the archaeology supports the science. Thonis-Heracleion and East Canopus lie east of Alexandria, Egypt. Though there had been earlier sightings of East Canopus, it was not officially discovered until 1999 by Frank Goddeau and team. Thonis-Heracleion was discovered later, in 2000. They currently lie 5 to 7 meters submerged down in the Abaco Bay. There is a distance of 3.3 kilometers between them. A range of geophysical survey techniques were implemented in seeking these sites, such as side-scan sonar. These sites supposedly span an occupation from the 7th century BC to the 8th century AD. These sites are also mentioned in historical texts by the likes of Herodotus in regards to the refusal of safe passage into Egypt for Helen of Troy and Paris. This research is my thesis for my undergrad bachelor degree. It started last summer when I began compiling all of the published artifacts from both sites into 2 separate catalogues. East Canopus has 94 artifacts, whereas Thonis-Heracleion has over 434. Here you can see just a snippet of each catalogue. As you can imagine, reading was fundamental in sourcing the data and recording each artifact. The results are important and show numerous things. On the left you can see that the number of finds for Thonis-Heracleion in the BC is 98% of the archaeological record, whereas only 2% represents the AD. For a city that supposedly flourished until the 8th century AD, one would expect more of the AD to be represented. If you look to the right, it is clear that East Canopus has a much fairer split represented. This is what you would imagine for Thonis-Heracleion. In fact, for East Canopus, more of the AD is represented, which is important considering it has much fewer artifacts recorded. The middle graph shows that Thonis-Heracleion dominates the overall archaeological assemblage. The 2 tables show that bronze and lead were the dominant materials recovered for Thonis-Heracleion, whereas East Canopus is represented heavily with gold. Looking now at the theories for the submergence of the cities, liquefaction is a popular one. Liquefaction is usually triggered by a natural disaster such as an earthquake. It makes the ground become unstable and causes it to collapse. It is clear both cities were built on soft clay sediment. The archaeological material was recovered from hard clay soil. In East Canopus, some walls and structures were found filled with sand. Crescent-shaped faults were also found. In these faults, an antelope's tibia was found and carbon-14 dated to around 40 BC. Plant fragments were also recovered and dates to around 100 AD. If liquefaction occurred here, it would only have accounted for 2.5 to 4 meters of the submergence. This picture is from the 2011 Christchurch earthquake, New Zealand, and shows just how devastating liquefaction can be. Natural disasters and Nile flooding are also heavily debated. If one did occur, it could have caused liquefaction. Historical accounts show earthquakes affected Alexandria, though there is no historical account to suggest these cities were affected. Human remains were found underneath structures, therefore likely to have been a sudden event. The Nilometer recorded an unusual high flood between AD 741 to 742. Though there were no warning from priests or authorities who would have recorded the floods. Personal belongings were also left behind, which would suggest something quick happened. The canopic branch silted up by AD 1000. Here you can see some personal belongings: a gold lion head earring, an amethyst pendant, and some gold. Gradual process layering and substrate dating are also factors which need to be addressed. Gradual process layering accounts only for 4 to 5 meters. Remember, these sites are 5 to 7 meters down in Yabuka Bay. Shanghai, Venice, and New Orleans are all modern-day examples of gradual process lowering. Recorded sea level rise only rose by 1 to 3 millimeters per year between 600 BC to AD 800. Regarding substrate dating, fiber cores were collected from different positions underneath both sites. This data showed that there was a molluscan faunal transition from lagoonal to marine to entirely marine, which would suggest this is when the sites became submerged. This data gives us the dates of Thonis-Heracleion becoming submerged sometime between 351 to 151 BC, whereas East Canopus likely became submerged between 201 BC to AD 150. When you compare these dates to the graphs from the results section, the graphs seem to support these dates, and therefore it is unlikely Thonis-Heracleion made it to the AD, and it's also likely that it was outlived by East Canopus, which did make it to the AD. Typological dating and coin hoards have also been explored for both sites, though one must remember typological dating is not certain and mistakes are made. It is mostly inorganic materials which have been dated this way because carbon-14 dates cannot be obtained. An important factor I noticed when researching is that there had been conflicting dating in different publications. The structures, such as the temple walls, have only been dated stylistically, so again these dates are likely to change depending on that person's interpretation. The work on the coins show no coin hoards from Thonis-Heracleion date to the AD. The coins were also found in a layer of sediment which covers the site. This sediment moves around for centuries due to currents, and therefore it is unlikely the coins have been found in their initial deposition. The graph on the left shows that the coins recovered from Thonis-Heracleion are predominantly Ptolemaic and Greek. Barely any are Byzantine or Islamic. If one then compares the coins to the pottery results on the right, there is barely any pottery that represents the AD. The bottom graph on the right shows that the coins found at nearby sites by Broad period. This shows that compared to other sites after the Ptolemaic period, Thonis-Heracleion's coinage drops suddenly. Here are some examples of the coins found: an Islamic coin, a Byzantine coin, and a Ptolemaic. To conclude this presentation, this research has reached various outcomes. It is probable Thonis-Heracleion sank before East Canopus, just before the AD, and not the 8th century AD as previously thought. It is likely some parts of East Canopus stayed inhabited until the AD 7th to 8th centuries. Due to the unreliable data of the coins, it would not be beneficial to use as evidence. The archaeological record does seem to support the substrate dating and liquefaction theories. One should next focus their attention on the human remains recovered from the site. On the left is a basic timeline of the sites, with the outcome of this research, and on the right is the decree of size found at Thonis-Heracleion, another example of the rich archaeology these sites yield. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. This last image here is a reconstruction of Thonis-Heracleion. If you have any questions on my research, please feel free to email me at s5100302@bournemouth.ac.uk, and I will be very happy to answer them.